Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Our third session. Today's topic is basically assessments, graded assignments, quizzes, discussions. We have a lot of options with Canvas. I'd like to remind everybody of the resources that are available for additional information, and that this particular topic is covered under session 4 in the asynchronous, and that's SOM is on a little bit of an abbreviated track. So the rest of the health professions aren't learning about this until next week, but I went ahead and put this resource together so you have access to it. And I'm going to go down the page and cover all of the topics, but I will say, we have a little bit of language when it comes to Canvas. And so they use the word assignments as something you give a grade, and the word activities as something you don't. And so they have this nice handout here that kind of explains the difference between, some of the ways you would do activities not grading, and then the options you do have for grades. So this is going to, have a lot of good information for you to refer back to. So I also want to share this comparison, and I'm going to paste the URL in our chat so that you can see that. And what this page is doing, it's comparing old, well, we call them old, but classic quizzes is the actual title, classic quizzes with new quizzes. Now, what you're going to find is most of the changes between these two features is cosmetic. It's very similar. It's just a little bit different workflow and how you accomplish it. So these are not taking the place, new quizzes are not taking the place of classic quizzes until the end of 2022. So you have some time before you really have to worry about that. And the action that will be required for this change is, if you've got classic quizzes built, you'll push a button in the menu to turn them into the new quiz format. So it's not really a whole lot of work. It's just a gradual process they're rolling out to replace their old feature with a new one. So that's definitely something you can take a look at, depending on what ways that you've used quizzes. You may be interested in more details. So I'm going to jump.
Can I ask you a question? If the new quizzes are rolling out in a year, then is there any need for us to quizzes at all? Shouldn't we just go right to the new quizzes so that we don't have to make any kind of conversion? Because none of us are using Canvas anyway.
So really, it depends on who's building your course and how they, Jessica might know more, right? So if she's got any classic quizzes built out from the Blackboard transfer, then that might be part of her workflow, but we'd have to ask for more details. Otherwise, no, jumping straight into new quizzes makes total sense. There's no reason why you cannot do that.
Melissa, just to touch on that. So all quizzes right now that are in previous courses, those are being rolled over to Canvas. So that is under the classic quizzes. So if you're not going to use a previous quiz that you had in a previous semester, then obviously you could start your own thing and do that other one that Melissa mentioned.
Yes, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. We'll take a look at it in the demo. So I definitely wanted to clarify assignments versus activities and sort of that way that Canvas frames the difference between the two. So if you're ever using their help guide or calling support, or just in talking about these features, that's how they refer to them. So I do want to point out what the course stream is. So all of activities go in the course stream. And if you click the button that's on the right-hand side, you can see what we're talking about. And recent activity is going to show up here. Students also have access to this feature. So definitely something to keep in mind. And just be familiar that important recent activities, announcements, discussions, assignments, and conversations are going to show up here. So I'm going to go back to my home page. And then I'm going to scroll. I'm going to talk about rubrics. So rubrics are used for grading criteria. And the first time I go into a new area in a Canvas course, I've got this help feature that pops open for me. If I want to read more, it's got me links to that information. And if I want to hide it, I just use the arrow to hide it. You can click Don't Show Again, and then it will not automatically pop open for you anymore. But the arrow, basically, I recommend just hiding it from yourself. You might want to check it out if there's something new. So rubrics are pretty straightforward. You're going to add a rubric just like you would most of the features in Canvas. You click that plus and add that button. You're going to give it a title, just like you would in all of your pages and announcements. Everything needs a title. And then you have the option to add various criteria, ratings, and points. And really, it's a matter of plus, and you can duplicate or you can add a new one. And so then it's going to ask me some more information that I would go through this process. So user-friendly, it's pretty clean. If you decide you do use rubrics, this is where you would want to go. And I recommend setting up your rubrics first. So then when you go to build out the rest of your assignments, you can attach a rubric at any given time. So just, it's your workflow. You could do it differently, but that's my recommendation. The next button I want to show you is discussions. So discussions can be graded, and they're pretty straightforward with adding plus discussion. The title and the rich content editor text area is all going to work the same that we learned about last week. Every space in Canvas is going to function exactly the same way. And then towards the bottom, you've got your options to do more stuff. So you would want to click graded. Now, what I would like to make sure everybody knows is that if you're going to do group work, you want to create your groups first and then be able to assign the group work using the checkbox. Now, the reason why I say that is because in Blackboard, the workflow is a little bit different. And if you created a group assignment, students would be prompted to join a self sign up when they went to do the assignment. Canvas does not work that way. Canvas will not prompt them, and Canvas will allow them to complete it individually. And then you will end up getting all of your students' individual work. And the only way to correct it after the fact is to delete the entire assignment and rebuild it. So definitely like to point this one out as very different from Blackboard. Create your groups first, put students in the groups, however you're going to manage that piece, and then use the group discussion setting or assignment. There is not a group feature for quizzes, so also just keep that in mind. So when you select graded, you do get all of these options down here. When you have an assignment worth 0 points, it does function as extra credit. So one of the pharmacy professors mentioned he always puts in at least a 1 if he's not sure how many points something is going to be worth, just so it doesn't function as extra credit in case he forgets to make the change. And then he says that his students are very quick to point out when the points are wrong, right, and not functioning as extra credit. So everybody would like that if they were. So you're going to choose your points, whether it's 10 or 100, whatever you would like here. And then you get to display the grade in a variety of ways. So a percentage is obviously going to take your points and show it in percentage. It's, you can do complete or incomplete, where they are just basically checking off that it's done. You can leave it as points by default. And then the letter grade option, right, you can also choose. So I definitely want to take time to say that your assignment group matters. So where you're putting your grades is going to matter on how your gradebook gets built automatically by your assignments. So you're probably thinking right now, we're in discussions, but you're calling it an assignment, and those are different, but they're actually not. Anything for a grade in Canvas is an assignment. It handles that connection in the back end for you. And what you're going to find happen is if I'm in discussions and I'm creating a graded discussion, once I click save, which I'm going to do now, I'm going to say save. And it does not, oops, I forgot to uncheck. I don't want a group assignment. Sorry about that. Okay, so now that I've got this information in here, I can come over to assignments and you'll see it did this for me. It put my no title discussion right here in the assignments area automatically. Same concept if you go into quizzes. Every quiz you make is going to automatically, if it's for a grade, be included in the assignments area. So they're all connected. If it's for a grade, it's an assignment. And once I go through this process here, I'm going to click the plus quiz. I get prompted to choose between the classic and the new quizzes. And like we already discussed, if you want to just jump straight to new quizzes and use that as the option, you can. I'm going to choose new quizzes just for the demonstration. And I'm not going to say remember my choice because I want to be able to come back later and show you the other one. So I'm going to say submit. And what you're going to see is all of the settings for a quiz, what it's called. So I'm going to say this is called a new quiz, so I can tell the difference after I built it. I'm going to say it's worth, maybe it's worth 100 points. And I'm going to leave that it's in the midterm exam and that it's going to be points. And I'm basically going to say submission type. I'm going to leave it alone. It's going to connect me to where I build the questions out. That's what's going on right here. So I'm going to leave that and I'm going to click save. Then it's going to prompt me. It's going to prompt me here to add instructions as well as questions. So when you click this button, your options pop up and you can select from any of these options. So there's a lot of different choices. I'm going to show a regular multiple choice question. And this would be my STEM. Actually, this would be my title. If you give your questions a title, they're easier to use in your question banks than if you leave them generic, right? So that's just one thing to keep in mind in your workflow. If you're planning to use question banks and reuse questions, giving them a good title is going to help you identify what the question was. So then here's my STEM. And then I'm just going to put in letters here to make it really simple. And at this point, I'm going to say that B is the correct answer. And I have options to add comments. So after students take the quiz and they answer and then they submit it, they would get, you can add that you want to add feedback. So I'm going to say done. And I realized that this quiz is worth 100 points, but I only have 1 point here. So I'd have 99 more to go to make that happen. And I'm going to stop with this example. So now I'm going to return. And you'll see on my quizzes page that the new quiz is now here and I can publish it if I'm ready, or I can leave it unpublished if I'm still working. And then I've got options to edit, to duplicate, and even to copy it out to a different course. So if you want to delete potentially, but usually you're not going to delete things that you've wanted to come in and create. So this is going to, of course, automatically be on my assignments page as well. So new quiz is showing right here. Now, that is why, okay, so it's most important that you recognize what happens on the assignments page is what builds your gradebook. So in Blackboard, you went into the gradebook and you could manipulate it in a variety of ways. but the assignments page is really what controls your gradebook in Canvas. So let's say you have attendance. You basically need to collect attendance because you're going to give a grade for it. You're going to click add an assignment. And this is not a discussion and it's not a quiz. It's just an assignment. And I'm going to call this attendance points. And maybe I've got some information here, maybe not. And then I'm going to change my assignment group. It's going to go to attendance. And then I'm going to say submission type. I actually want this to be a no submission because attendance is not going to be something they turn into you. You also could have them do something online. You could say that they're turning in a paper to you in person, or you can choose an external tool, which gives you, the option to enter that tool here. So I'm going to choose no submission for my attendance. Now I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to give it a due date. I'm going to make that due date May 14th, just as an example. I also can select available from and until dates. So this is a feature in every graded option. You can open it on a certain date and time, and then you can close it on another date and time. So you have total control over the behavior. So let's say it's due the 14th by midnight, but I'm going to let them do it late. So I've given a bigger window, and you just can choose however this works for what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to click.
Listen, I've got a quick question.
Yes.
Occasionally we will have a student that has some life emergency and they can't complete an assignment by the due date, and you grant them permission to do, and within Blackboard, you can name that student, give them a new start and end date. Can you do the same thing in Canvas?
Absolutely. So there is a way to assign per student to give it something different. So when you come in to your assignments, and the same goes for quizzes, you can give an additional time as well. So let's say here, I'm going to edit my discussion. And this is my discussion. And I'm going to go to more options. And when you scroll down, your assigned to everyone is chosen by default, but you can actually choose, and your list of students will come up here. And so you can add as many of these as you want. You can assign to an individual for different dates. You can assign to a section, an entire section, depending on how your students are registered. Yeah, no, total control over these features, absolutely.
Melissa, that leads me to another follow-up question to that. I know you're doing an assignment, but like for quizzes, sometimes we have learners that require extra time and a half. So where would the adjustment be?
Absolutely. So there is, once you've got, let's see, we'll go into quizzes. And I'm looking for, I'm going to open up a resource course, 1 second. And I've got these instructions already typed out, and I always refer back to the instructions because sometimes you're, just takes a while to memorize every little step. So coming back in, how do I give students selected additional time on a quiz? So basically, you're going to moderate the quiz. Now, why that's not there, I'm not entirely sure. That's a really good question. So like, I really should be able to come in here and I really should have an option to moderate, but it could be, it could be that there's some sort of reason why, and I'm going to have to look that up, but I can follow up in my email and make sure that I find out all those details for you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Absolutely. So they're actually, you know what? I think
Is there a history overview? So when we click on quizzes, open the quiz on the right side, it should say moderate. Are we not seeing that?
Well, so if I create a classic quiz, so this is where we're all going to be currently, everyone's learning new quizzes. So there's some quirks about it. I still have to figure it out. So this one's a classic. You should see exactly what we're looking for having this one. So in classic quizzes, I have all the same options and I can go and do everything that I was doing, but my questions are in the same place. So I can add a new question and I can do all of this. I can say sample and all is good. I'm going to update my question to save it. I'm going to save and publish. And then when I come here, I have options to moderate this quiz. This is where it's handled and you can come in and I can basically decide to give more attempts, more time. I have total control over what my student does here. But I created a new quiz and now I don't have that feature. So that's where I'm going to have to look at why. I don't know why. I have to find out.
Is it, Melissa, is it maybe if you go back a screen to where you were before? And there were 3 dots, right? See, next to the red box, it says plus quiz. Is it?
So this is where you manage your question banks.
Okay, never mind.
That's going to be an important place, especially if you use question banks. Whenever you create quizzes, it's going to keep them here for you and you can come in and see what has been created. But yeah, no, that's not it. So I thought new quizzes, yeah, it's just a different layout. And since it's still really new, I have to figure that out. Good question. I like this. All right, so you've basically seen the plus button using the rich content editor, just like we talked about last week. It's a lot of the same, looking for the settings that control the features you're trying to create for your students. Basically, lots of options that are going to be very unique to whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I'd like to come back to the assignments page and pause if anybody has any other questions about just the creation and control process of getting stuff in here. So, all right, if we're good on that, now I want to talk about controlling your assignments page and being able to manipulate the information that's here. So on your quizzes, you're going to get them in the order that they choose to be in, but you have control on the assignments page. So once you've built all of your assignments, you get to move them around. If you want to put them in order of due date, which is what I recommend, I put them in the right category and then I put them in order chronologically that students are going to complete them. But you have total control over how you want to do that. So you can drag and drop. You can also come up here and edit assignment dates in one central location. So you can basically just go through and do updates very quickly for your individual due dates. You can click the edit here to get the shortcut to make fast changes, and then click more options if you need to get more detailed, or you can click the actual title and come over to edit to get access to all of it. So multiple ways to accomplish the same task. So from the assignments page, so this sort of talks about some of that information for editing and how you can control where things go. On this right-hand side, the percentages you're seeing are weighted. So this was controlled by coming up here to the snowman and selecting assignment groups weight, and then basically putting in that information here. And we can see we're only at 90%. I'm not sure why. I'm going to change this. And now attendance is 15% of the grade and I'm at 100. So you control all of these numbers. You can create as many groups as you need to. The way Canvas calculates grades is everything in the same group is averaged together. So you can edit some of these behaviors. So I got to this by going to the top bar. This is the editing the entire group. And then I can rename it, as well as drop lowest and highest scores, as well as create never drop rules. So depending on how your syllabus describes your process for grading, it would be set up accordingly. So that's all handled at the upper level for assignment groups. Wait in one spot, or you can also edit each of the individual groups. So really at this point, once you've done this, you're going to see you've got a column in your gradebook for each of these assignments. And then you're going to have the group's average column. It's going to show you that. And then it's going to take the weighted and give you your final grade column. In your settings, this is where you add the grading scheme so that that numerical final grade, it's going to tell it you get an A or a B or C. So that's going to be in your grading scheme area in settings. I'll open that up just as a reminder. It's going to be right here, and it's a checkbox, and then you can set the grading scheme at this point. And they're very simple to edit. You can delete entire rows with the X, or you can just change the numbers if you like what you see.
Melissa, and it's by default already with the UIW schema, right?
It is not. By default, there is no grading scheme. It will just be empty. But there is a UIW scheme. When you say select another scheme, you can choose this one.
Right, okay.
But by default, it is turned off. Okay, so we're going to actually go take a look at the gradebook now. And when you click grades, it's going to open your gradebook. And you'll see I have my test student is in here. I got my test student in here by clicking the student view button. So just to be clear, that is this lovely button at the top right of each page with little glasses. As soon as I click that, it automatically created a test student for me. And that way I can come back here and I can put in pretend grades. If I wanted to go back and actually pretend to be the student, I can also take the assignments and complete them. You can upload things. You can just sort of get a feel for what your students are going to be doing. You can practice that all yourself. And if you do something that you then want to clear out, you just want to use the reset student button and it will delete all of that data. It will not save it if you choose this button. I'm going to leave the student view and jump back over. So your gradebook here, you've got a column for each of these assignments, like I had mentioned. Then you will notice the weighted columns for the weighted groups that were created. And notice I changed this to be 15%, but I didn't change the name. So that's just an interesting oops, something to keep in mind so you don't make the same mistake. And then of course that total column. So you've got some options here. You've got different views and you can see the gradebook history. So any changes that are ever made, you'll be able to come here and take a look at that. You've got different ways you can view your gradebook. So don't forget that if you change the view and then you come back and it looks funny, don't forget the default order. You know, if you change this, it won't automatically go back. It'll remember and stay showing you how you indicated you wanted to see it. So you can filter and you can take notes and do some other features. But what I want to point out here is import and export. So this is one of, I think, the most important things to know. If you are learning and grading students' work, coming in and exporting the gradebook before you get started is a really safe way. You save this Excel file and onto your computer. And then if anything happens and you make a change and you want to revert it back, you can import that file back into here and fix it all. So it's a manual process, but if you make a mistake, you could fix it if you remember to export first. Okay, and you'll see the red warning, right? I didn't publish certain items and it is letting me know these aren't published. Nothing can happen until I've published the actual assignments back over in the rest of the course. So just to go back to my assignments area, and I want to quickly edit and add some due dates. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time picking reasonable ones. I'm just gonna go into May. I'm gonna save them just so I can get some due dates in here. And now when I come over to my syllabus, you'll see all of that is indicated in the course summary for the students. So it happens automatically. You do not have to come and enter it anywhere else.
That's awesome, Melissa.
Yes, that's my favorite feature. It's also going to be on the calendar. I'm not a big fan of the calendar because it opens elsewhere and you leave your course you're working in to have to look at the calendar, but it's still a very nice feature. So once you've got your assignments built, just so you know, you can also accomplish everything we've talked about right here on the calendar as well. So let's say you want to do a quiz on the 16th. You just click in that square and then choose what it is that you're wanting to accomplish. So you do have some options. You can personal, my to-dos, appointment groups, you can do an assignment, you can do an event, but you've got some options here. And then of course you can click more options and it'll pull up right back where we were when we were initially starting it. So Canvas really has multiple ways to accomplish the same thing. And keep in mind, when you're talking about the calendar, your dashboard controls the color of the calendar. So that's just a reminder. I probably talked about it on the first day, but whatever option I choose in color, it will change the text color to be matching my course. So keep that in mind. And then also I like to just give a little warning. It's sensitive. You can accidentally drag and drop and change the due date of anything that's on the calendar without it ever warning you that you've done so. So it is a place to be careful, especially if you're co-teaching and somebody's come in, they've already got it set up. You come over to the calendar to add an event. Just make sure that you don't accidentally drag and drop any of the existing items. Any questions on that?
Melissa, I just had one follow-up question. So thank you so much for everything you've talked about thus so far. In the assignments area, I did notice it really does look like it does not leave room for a complicated formula, right?
Correct. The way I describe is about all you can do.
Right.
You can have some manipulation by using what's called grading periods. So that's a little bit more complex, but grading periods is an option. So let's say, you're teaching a 6-week course and there's one formula for doing the first 3 weeks of the grade and a second formula for the last 3 weeks of the grade. You can use grading periods to manage that separately. But again, that's a much more advanced way of using Canvas. In all my years at UT Health with Long School of Medicine, we never used that. So it would definitely be something I'm happy to investigate if you need it. But everything that goes into a group gets averaged and the weight gets applied. That's just a straightforward way that the system works.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about the activities? If I wanted to give an assignment that really is not a graded assignment, is it you do it the same way? It's just you don't add points, or because I don't see something separate that says activity.
So there is a checkbox that usually will say, don't apply this to the final grade. So let me find where that option is. So coming back to assignments. And I'm just going to look at the attendance points one for an example. So this do not count this assignment towards the final grade. That's how it would just be an activity. You can still give them points so that they know how well they did on that activity, but it's not going to count towards their final grade.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely, you're very welcome. These are good questions. I'm going to go into this classic quiz. You'll see this particular quiz, you don't have the option to not have it count towards a grade. That's because classic quizzes has surveys and practice quizzes as a feature. So that's a choice, whereas new quizzes is taking that away, and new quiz will have the option to do not apply this to the final grade. So it's one of the biggest feature changes.
Okay, so let me give you an example. I think that I may have an activity in a module, let's say, to send students to watch a video and then answer some reflection questions so that they're ready to discuss that during class time. So would that be better to just make that as an ungraded assignment and activity per se, or just to present that information on a page in the module?
I think the most important part is knowing, do you want to track if they've done it or not? So you can make a page, you could put the video, you could put the questions on the page, and you could add the student to do date and time to tell them to do it, and it would have nothing to do with the grading at all. But that's just a page sitting in your course. You wouldn't be able to necessarily know who completed it, right? So there's there's some analytics, but it's not that great where you could really drill down to know who was on that page and how much time they spent. So your alternative choices is to do an assignment or a quiz. The quiz being the most powerful. So when a student starts a quiz, the clock starts ticking and you have an entire log that's you're going to be able to go and look at the details of when they opened it, when they started. So if you want to be able to see that stuff, you literally could make it a quiz, add the video to the instruction area, add the questions you want them to answer, and then they would go through and take it like it was a quiz, even though you can click do not add it to the final grade. So
okay, or there would be also a way to click it off. It would either be completed or not completed with a check mark.
Yes, you just select that from the drop down menu for what you're trying to accomplish.
Because then that way I don't have to go through and grade 40 students
Correct.
to exactly. Yeah, I want to avoid that.
I
50
completely
students,
understand. Yes.
summer class, assignments every day.
So yeah, you definitely have the option in this assignment. You can choose complete or incomplete and do not count. And then you don't have to worry about it, the 100 points affecting their numbers, right, in their grade. Or
Right. And that would show up in the grade book. So I would be able to see that whole column with all the check marks.
correct.
All right, cool. That's exactly what I want. I could hug you.
Yeah, no, it's very friendly with trying to accomplish different things. Just a lot of ways. And so, depending on what you're trying to do, you're gonna have to think through, okay, what are my choices and what are the pros and cons? Okay, lots of great questions. I want to revisit the chat. Hey, Carlos, you put moderating and new quizzes. Without making me open and read that, did you look at it?
Yeah, it's just a picture actually.
Okay, cool.
It's so when you click on new quiz, when you have the option to select,
Yes.
so you should be able actually to go into one that's already done. Yeah, edit.
Edit.
Yeah. No,
It takes a minute to load. Don't be distracted by the rubric. It
I'm
scares me.
distracted.
Yeah, I
Hit,
don't know why it does that.
hit save and publish.
Okay, so I'm gonna save and publish. Okay. I could have also done that. I could have done that right here. Hold on one sec. Let it load.
Right there at the top.
Okay.
On the right side. Oh, no. Over to the left. It's the last word right there.
There we go. And I can't really do anything because it's not a real class and it doesn't have real.
Right.
So we have a lot of, I would like to say a lot of details to work out when things are live. And I don't want anyone to hesitate to reach out for help or to answer questions in a more timely way that's relevant to as you're working through things. And of course, the help menu, we have Canvas support 24/7. So even if you're not at work and something comes up, these are the experts on the phone, little less so with the chat. So the more experienced people are on the phone line. If you have something a little bit more complicated, if it's a simple question, just, refresh my memory on how I do this, the chat works well. So I'm here and we'll get through it.
Melissa, at some point will we go over the format that a quiz or a test needs to be in order to import it?
So Respondus is going to be, Respondus is a third-party tool that you can use to import quizzes, and that would be not in Canvas training. It's not going to change necessarily. If you did it in Blackboard, it's very similar. It's just going to be a little different, and we can definitely get resources and make sure everybody knows how to do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great questions. Okay, your silence, if you're feeling comfortable, then you can have 15 minutes back, and otherwise I'm going to stick around and answer any questions. If you have more, I'm going to stop the recording.